I'd like to just introduce our CEO, Mark Watt. Mark, if you just want to say a quick hello before we get into our speakers.
Yeah, look, I'd just like to welcome everyone here. It's great to see so many here. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land and the land we're all on, and elders past, present and emerging. And just really thank you to hear. We are very concerned about the well-being of teachers, especially through this stage 4 in Victoria, in Melbourne here. And look, anything we can do to help as an organisation, please reach out. You know, we're keen to help you and the students that you work with as well. So thanks for the opportunity to be here, and it's great.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay, so just really quickly, some Zoom groom. If you can keep your cameras on, if you can, like I said, if you want to switch them off and just relax and listen, that's fine. Please keep yourselves on mute. With regards to Q&A, we're going to do a Q&A at the end of this call. And what we're going to ask you to do, if you can please put the speaker's name first in the chat box, and then your questions, and we'll collate all the questions during the call, and then go through the questions speakers by speaker. So just the speaker's name and your question in the chat box during the talks, and then we'll get to all the questions later. So we've got some amazing speakers today. We've got Dianne Summers, who is an educational and development psychologist. We've got Sue Carr, who is the principal at St. Brendan's Primary School, and we've got Anthony Klarica, a psychologist and the founder of the 6-Star Wellbeing Survey. So our first speaker is Dianne Summers. Dianne is an educational and development psychologist who has worked with children, adolescents, and families across the government, Catholic, and independent school sectors. Dianne began her career as a primary and secondary teacher whilst completing postgraduate studies in psychology at Melbourne and Monash universities. Wow. Dianne is passionate about translating research knowledge into clinical and educational practice. She regularly consults to schools, supporting the development of whole school well-being programs, inclusive practices, and support for students with disabilities in mainstream settings. Dianne is the co-author of Change Agents, Promoting Self-Awareness, Collaboration, Leadership, and Community Action, a middle years curriculum program, and communication cards, a social emotional counseling tool. Both are published by In Your Head Press. I love that. Dianne, I am going to hand over the reins to you. I'm going to stop sharing and give the reins to you to share your presentation, and we really look forward to hearing what your words of wisdom.
Thanks, Shireen. So fingers crossed all the technology works as we move from one person to another. So we'll just make sure that everybody can see that. Okay. All right, so my topic is teacher wellbeing and caring for the carer in changing times. And I think I'm going to start with just thinking about who is the teacher. And when I think I used to work as a teacher with something similar pinned to my notice board, which is more about the teacher, social worker, parent, and every other role that we fill. And I think when we just think about what teachers do in a day, it's pretty easy then to see where some of the sources of stress can come from. So that's my talk done. No. Let's have a think about that a bit further. That really, in some ways, teaching and schools can be almost a culture of stress just by the nature of the environment that they're in. So what is the research actually telling us about that actual culture of stress? Well, one thing we know is that in Australia, 41% of teachers report high levels of occupational stress, which is just huge, hence the title. It's almost a culture of stress. We know, for example, that teachers make more mental stress claims than any other industry in work cover, and that we've in fact got similar rates in teachers and principals in the US, perhaps higher rates in the UK. So it's a worldwide phenomenon, not just Australia. We know that 40% of Australian school principals report feeling stressed or bullied. When we think about principals, that they're actually reporting that they're being bullied quite significantly, and I think probably more in recent years from parents. So yeah, the behaviour of parents can have a real impact. 46% of K-12 students surveyed in the United States reported feeling stressed on a daily basis. So you can see that's similar rates to Australia. So UK, we've got 81% of teachers, but including in that is also depression and anxiety. So that might also be coming not as a result of stress at work, hence that might explain those larger numbers there.
Dianne, sorry, I don't think your screen sharing is on. I don't think we can see your presentation.
Okay, so it's not coming now. Let me try again. Okay.
Sorry to interrupt you.
That's all right. I'm glad you did. Can we see it now? No, still not on. All right, something's happening.
All good now.
Good now? Great. Okay. Okay, so if we think about role stresses, so what is it that's actually resulting in that stress for both principals and teachers and early career? So for principals, we've got 1/3 of school principals who are saying that they're experiencing an incident of physical assault. Which is, again, if we look at other workers, that's 6 times higher than other workers. So that data is back from 2013, but I'm sure would still be current. And as I said before, most of those attacks or threats are actually coming from parents, and greater number happening in rural areas, which obviously is a real concern. The other thing that we know principals are reporting is that they're stressed by the expectations and lack of administrative support in schools, teacher shortages, and then, not surprisingly, with the information about those assaults and feeling threatened, dealing with parents. When we think about teacher stress, we're talking about workload, workplace conditions, climate, and expectations. So we think about teachers, some of those, if we drill down a bit further, some of those stresses that they're reporting are assessment targets, conflict with management and colleagues, having to adapt and implement new curriculum, teaching efficacy, so that, you know, that's still concerned to be able to adapt, learn new skills, to be able to teach well. And if you think about recent history, just even in recent history, every time there's a curriculum change or new curriculum, move to open plan, back to classrooms, new literacy training packages, new numeracy training packages that are coming from above, that requires reskilling each time. So result of that, we have impact on self-esteem and status, false public perceptions of teachers, lack of professional opportunities at time in terms of being able to move up and take on different responsibility positions, and lack of involvement at decision-making level of educational reforms. So that sense of things are being done to us rather than us actually having a say in what's going on. If we think about early career teachers, we know that more than 1 in 4 teachers are thinking about leaving the profession within the first 5 years. So that's a huge turnover. And then we think about all the follow-on impacts of that. So for new teachers, reasons for stress and burnout, new practices not accepted by peers, feeling isolated, sometimes feeling they're being given the toughest classes, lack of administrative support, and much tougher emotional conditions than expected. And similarly, Shireen said, I'm at Monash University now in the ed faculty, and we're running our psychology programs are running some mindfulness programs for the pre-service teachers, because they're reporting experiencing that even on teaching rounds. So even going out on pre-service placements, finding it far harder emotionally than they were expecting it to be. So if we think about all those lists of stressors that I just had then, and then we think about the impact of COVID-19, is that all of those factors are impacted even further and probably escalated with COVID. So no surprising that we're starting to hear about the increased stress for teachers during this time. And so the need for schools to think about how they're actually managing these things. So just a quick snippet. These have done the rounds of Facebook, so people have probably seen bits of them, but I just think they're so pertinent. And I think even as a lecturer working from home and Zooming with students, probably actually share some of these concerns that people are experiencing. Now, can people hear that? Just thumbs up if you can hear the video. Good. I'm going to flick through.
Put that down right now! Why not? What did I say about the kid? So sorry about it. Yeah. Put that down right now! Yes, you have to write complete sentences. Kylie, is everything okay? Of course you can use the computer for your assignment. You kidding me? Alright, see you soon, buddy. Okay. Yes, I agree with that, but we could use a little more. Sorry, excuse me, just a sec. Wait, I'm in a meeting. No, staff meeting. Yeah, I know it's the 31 today. Not having about it either. Yes, I should have my reports finished by tomorrow. Yes, it's almost over. As long as Carol stops asking questions. Yes, of course, I reach out to all the parents, but.
And some of the things we're finding ourselves saying.
Mute your mics. Mute your mics. Hi, guys. Hi. So excited to see you. I don't have to ask if you can go to the bathroom. You can just go. It's your house. But wash your hands. No, don't bring a computer into the bathroom. No one needs to see that. No. All right. Happy Wednesday. It's Thursday? Wow. Sorry, the days are kind of blended together here. Yes, okay. Well, my headphones are plugged in. You can't hear me, so hello? 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 Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? All right. So everybody sees this right here? What we're going to do is, oh, it's backwards? Okay, so let's try it like this. Is that better? So that assignment is.
So what we've got is a whole lot of things happening in this new environment that is requiring a huge amount of change for teachers. And I just like those two videos. If you haven't seen them, have a scroll on them for Facebook, because I think that's the reality of what many of us are living with, trying to work from home. And then that last, our secret is there is no plan. And I think that constant state of not knowing what might be coming next. And even because of the environment on a macro level, so what's coming from the system next, but also on the micro level, we're working from environments where we almost don't know what's going to happen next, just in our own environment and teaching. So what does that mean in terms of impact? So impact of stress on teachers and principals and our staff means that we're actually going to have different work outcomes. So from a system perspective, we're actually going to have impacts on teaching and the ability to be able to perform our role, and on our relationships with students and the relationships with parents. What we also know is that when they're under stress, 70% of teachers do not feel engaged in their work. And that's even teachers who are not reporting high levels of stress. Once we have teachers not engaged, then that actually has a direct impact on student engagement. We know once teachers are starting to lose engagement because of their stress, we start to lose student engagement as well. So we end up with a third of teachers, that disengagement indicating that they intend to leave the profession within the next 3 years. So as well as early career teachers, we've also got mid-term and longer-term career teachers who also end up indicating that they intend to leave the profession once they're experiencing any level of stress. Personal impact. So we have impact on teachers, but we also have impact on, so we have impact on the system, but we also have impact, personal impact and costs for teachers themselves. So we've got teachers who are reporting burnout, physical and emotional distress, and they're finding it's also damaging personal relationships at home. So it has really wide-reaching ramifications. And then we have that just interconnected dynamic of we end up with patterns of student behaviour because the students are disengaging. That then impacts on teacher stress. We end up in that codependent cycle that's really difficult to interrupt. We have quality of relationships between peers and teachers. Also then result on student and staff poor connectedness. So again, that just cycle keeps going. So what we need to think about then for me, it's about collective care for self-care, and Anthony's going to pick up more on that in his presentation later on. But we know that there are factors that have been identified that are protective against teacher stress and burnout, and I think that's where we really need to think in times like this, that we need stress needs to be tackled jointly by employers, unions and teacher professional organisations together, that just tackling one area is not going to help. But we know if we can increase sense of self-efficacy for teachers, so belief in their ability to have some control over their own environment and what's happening, makes a difference. We know if there are resources put in place for teachers, that if we can improve connectedness between students and colleagues, so ways of linking those relationships together, and allowing staff to feel supported by colleagues and receiving recognition for their work. So again, I just think that's really interesting at this time when there's at times quite negative portrayals of teachers in terms of during COVID and what they're providing or not providing. I think some parents have been extremely supportive and really thankful for the work that teachers are doing, but I'm also really aware that there are some schools and teachers who are copying a lot of criticism, that parents are saying it's not good enough and demanding more. And when we think about receiving recognition and sense of self and identity is so important to wellbeing, it's an area that we really need to target. Okay. I'd like to talk a little bit about innovations for wellbeing, and I'll finish off here. This is actually something that's come out from school psychology and counselling services research that's underway at the moment. So I'm involved in a major research project where we've actually surveyed school psychologists, school counsellors, school wellbeing coordinators, starting with mostly Victoria, but Australia-wide, and now the study's been undertaken in Germany as well, where we've looked at what are the innovations and adaptations to support student wellbeing, but you'll notice I've put in teacher mental health and wellbeing there. So the focus of the study has been about students, but we've had a lot of responses about teachers. And I think if you look at some of the innovations that schools have been undertaking for students and think about the fact that they could very easily be applied for teachers and teaching staff as well. So, some things that we know that schools are already doing. So there's online mindfulness or wellbeing hubs for groups of students. So providing drop-in spaces like we used to in class, in schools at lunchtimes, sometimes in the wellbeing area, sometimes in the library, sometimes in the gym. But schools have actually been doing that online. So I work with a couple of schools who I know are running breakfast clubs and lunchtime games clubs for their students that used to drop in and use the wellbeing spaces. Schools are developing school-wide wellbeing webinars that parents, teachers and students can listen to and watch, and some of them are including quite practical strategies like mindfulness. So they're promoting student self-care and wellbeing management, but again, they could actually be applied for teachers to support teachers. Online extracurricular groups, So Lego clubs, I've already mentioned a couple of the others. School TV, so watching a school TV program together behind the school TV. Students checking in with teachers for a morning meeting, developing things, and these will be schools that previously haven't had morning meetings but now are for the first time. So they've even called them keep in touch sessions. So just drop in sessions where they're just maintaining a connection and relationship rather than it being focused on getting the work done. Use of how are you today ratings. Quite a number of schools for students have got a button that they can push that actually is just a rating either once a week, some schools even daily, where students are just rating how they're tracking at the moment from a 1 to 5. But it allows alerts to be, okay, someone's actually struggling. We need to actually reach out to them and put some supports in place. Schools undertaking parent webinars and then online resources posted to wellbeing pages. So I've put that up there because I think it's really interesting that we've developed a whole lot of innovations to look after student wellbeing because they're not face-to-face and on campus, but I think it raises some possibilities for teachers as well. Okay.
Wonderful.
That is it for me.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Dianne. That was really, really informative, and I thank you for bringing in those videos and just having a bit of a lighthearted giggle as well, because I think all of us can relate.
Yeah.
I think we'll all have interesting, funny stories of being online and new language, and like you said, things we never thought we would say, and some really interesting innovations that we will come back to in the Q&A. So I'm going to introduce our next speaker. So Dianne, thank you so much again for taking the time to be here. I'm going to introduce our next speaker. I've known Sue for quite some time now, and I'm really excited that Sue, you're here to join us. Sue Carr is the principal at St. Brendan's Primary School in Somerville on the Mornington Peninsula. Sue is a wife, mother, a grandmother, a teacher, a trained coach, and holds a qualification in positive psychology. Sue always has had a profound interest in people and in what motivates and excites them. She loves to know what makes people tick. She believes that relationships are everything. From strong relationships come great results. Getting these things right helps Sue help individuals and teams to get the best out of themselves and each other. This set of beliefs and skills has been essential in supporting the parents, students, and staff during the many challenges of COVID-19. Sue believes the key elements of a positive psychology approach are the bedrock for supporting teachers and staff who are working harder and more creatively and collaboratively more than ever before to guide children and support parents through this challenging time. Sue, thank you so much again for making time to be here. And I will hand the reins over to you, and we look forward to you sharing in your journey and reflections.
Hi, Shireen. Thank you very much. And hello, everyone. I'm honoured to be here. I have no slide presentation. You're just going to have to bear with me as I talk to you for a few moments. Shireen mentioned that, I think one thing to probably say to the teachers in the audience is that I'm a late entry teacher to the profession. I didn't become a teacher until I was 39 years old. So I had life experience as a mum and, in other areas. So I've always brought that sense of what teachers and principals and parents and kids can achieve together when it's working well. So that's the premise from which I work. I believe that I'm a passionate advocate for everything about positive psychology. And since undertaking that study, I would go so far as to say probably the learnings that I've had have changed my life. I wasn't going to reveal this.
I don't know if the black one's got a tag, but it's the same as the grey one.
Oh, okay.
I wasn't going to reveal this, but I have decided that I will. In late 2017, I experienced some of the things that Dianne was talking about. I'm pleased to say not physical violence or threats, but all of a sudden it dawned on me that I was actually burning out. That this new job, this new role of probably about 4 or 5 years into principalship, was bigger and harder than I thought it would be. And so I took a few weeks off and worked with the things I'd learned in my positive psychology studies and decided that I needed to apply them to me. And if I could apply them to me, then probably we could apply them to kids in our school. And I strongly believe that if teachers are going to teach children, they have to model what they're teaching. Children cannot be what they cannot see. And many of the kids that we teach in our schools don't see these things modelled in their homes. So I believe that positive psychology and well-being for all is the bedrock from which all good things happen. So teaching, we know what we aim to do when we teach, but we've got to make sure that we are in the best place, both spiritually, physically, intellectually, relationally, and emotionally, and that our kids are too. And where Dianne ended, that I think is really interesting, is that idea of what we do for kids, we need to do for each other, and we need to do for staff. Now, I don't for one moment profess to have all of the answers, but we've decided at St Brendan's that wellbeing is our starting place. And I want to say right here that I also believe that in our country, unless we've lived on the margins of homelessness and, you know, the real extremes of life, wellbeing is a personal responsibility, first and foremost. We have to stand up and take charge of ourselves so that we can show others, including the children we teach, how to do that. So St Brendan's is a Catholic primary school. We're not very big. We have an enrolment of 254 students. There are 18 teachers, both full and part-time, 10 learning support officers, or ES staff, as they're sometimes called, 2 admin staff, and a wonderful team who keep our school and grounds clean and organised and functioning. And cleaning has become absolutely essential in this environment, as you all know. We have 171 families. Our job is obviously to teach and to educate children, obviously in literacy, numeracy, etc. But really we want them to learn so that they can thrive and grow up into healthy, functioning adults. Whether we're teachers or whether we're parents, that's our job. It's to help raise and educate children so they don't need us in the same way that they do if they don't have education. So the vision at St Brendan's is simply this: in order to flourish in life, every child and every person is known, encouraged, challenged and supported to be the very best version of themselves. That's our work. And the way we go about that is certainly to partner with parents, but we need to bring great awareness to ourselves and how we show up every day. And as a principal, I have 2 things that I use, not only as a principal, but as a wife, as a mum, as a grandmother, as a friend, as a daughter. I have my personal values, which are my roadmap for living. I won't share all of them with you, but a few include integrity. So saying when I say I'll do something, that I do it. I value family. I value love and kindness. I've learned to really value the importance of health. I practice gratitude and I like to contribute. They're my values. That's my roadmap of how I live. My toolkit, on the other hand, are my character strengths, which I learned about when I studied positive psychology. There are 24 of them. Anyone can take the test and it's free. My top 5 are love. These are the ways I lead. I lead through love. I lead through kindness. I lead through social intelligence. I have perspective, which is sometimes a big problem in decision making. When you can see everybody's point of view, it's hard sometimes to decide, and that can be a challenge. And the final one is gratitude. It's bothering to look up and notice that even though things can be difficult, we're still incredibly gifted in our lives here in this country. So to be a teacher, it takes the most amazing amount of dedication and commitment. because we constantly go through this cycle, I think, that I'm about to describe to you. Number one, we need to bring energy to our work every day. How we show up with energy impacts those who look at us, those who work with us, and those who learn from us. Our work takes practice too. It's a craft that we really need to refine. And then we know we're constantly asked to reflect on what we've done. How did it go? What worked well? Even better if. Then it takes refinement. So we're constantly sifting and working to be able to do all kinds of things better, whether it's teaching how to read, whether it's teaching a maths process, whether it's teaching emotional literacy to children. Constantly we're working out on how do we do this better. And sometimes it takes total reinvention. Let's throw it out. It's a disaster. Let's do something else. And that takes commitment. And I think sometimes it does shock pre-service teachers or early career teachers, or even people who've been, excuse me, I have to move or my lights won't come back on. There we go. And even teachers who've been in the game and who are incredibly skilled and feel that they shouldn't have to do any more. The energy that we call on daily is massive, and it can impact our well-being. So our work's both energising and exhausting. And this is why I believe well-being of staff is absolutely essential. So when Shireen approached me to do this talk, I surveyed my staff and said, tell me what it is that you think I do that helps to make the climate in our school, that helps to make the landscape, we can navigate it. And these are the things they said they felt were most important. They said that I am a good listener and that I can listen to what is said, but I know how to listen for what's not said. And I credit perhaps some of my coach training for that. That I am present, that I show up. I don't want to be the person in the jacket in the office. I want to be known as a teacher who walks among teachers. They say I walk my talk, that I'm authentic and that I'm available. I've prided myself on having an open door policy because the person who was my first principal modelled that daily to us, and I realised how important it was. I articulate my values. They say I'm authentic with my emotions. I don't try, some principals would probably say you're too authentic with your emotions. You need to maintain the facade more often, but that's not how I roll. Wellbeing is always front of mind for me, whether it's my family, whether it's just me, or whether it's this school and the community. Wellbeing for me, that's where it starts, and it should be where it ends too. And they mentioned that they like some of the random acts of kindness that I perform, which, believe me, aren't many, but I do like to walk around in the mornings, do all the gates, put heaters on, unlock doors, turn lights on, things like that. So they've asked me to continue doing that. They don't realise that I'm trying to get my steps up at the same time. But anyway, there we go. And my awareness for myself as a leader is that I have to nurture me because no one else is going to. And that's never been more evident than through this COVID time. I believe I had my COVID moment, and I possibly didn't show my finest self. It didn't last long, but I realised that this work, whether it's COVID times or not, impacts everybody, and we get exhausted. And we have to allow ourselves permission to be human and say, maybe I wasn't at my finest then, but I'm going to come back tomorrow and try again. If I don't do that, then I can't nurture everybody else who's on my staff and who's looking to me sometimes to provide answers. So I spoke before about wellbeing being essential and the model that I learned. You know, spiritual wellbeing is really strong. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean religion, even though I work in a Catholic school. There is nothing more beautiful than going into particularly a junior grade in the morning and joining in their prayer where children are just asking heartfelt requests or thanking God for things. We use meditation and teach meditation and mindfulness at our school. We explicitly teach yoga, and our staff have the opportunity to work with that as well. Physical well-being is essential. Intellectually, we're stimulated all the time in having to know more and give more. We need to work in teams, and we now need to celebrate what teams do, because we're designed to be connected as humans. We teach emotional literacy to children. We need to be aware of our own. I'm going to race through this last little bit. The impact of the pandemic, as I see it in a school, has been uncertainty, fear, changed working conditions for teachers, staff looking for leadership when sometimes the leaders have no answers because the advice hasn't come to us, and just having to say to people, just hold the space with me and we'll do the best when we know. People are working harder than they've ever worked before. They're learning new skills and being adaptive. They may have experienced disconnection and isolation while working at home, or they may have taught from home with a partner who's lost their job, a year 12 child whose world's been turned upside down. It goes on and on, aging parents in nursing homes. From time to time, people lose hope, and it's the relentlessness of it. We don't know when it's going to actually end, and we're not used to that because of the generations we've been born in. We haven't lived through a war, so 6 months feels like a really long time to us. And there's grief. There's grief because when we got to New Year's Eve at the end of 2019, we planned a year, and we have brought our fresh hopes and our fresh dreams, and we've had to watch a lot of them just fizzle out and disappear. So being a person of hope, hope builds well-being. And I think that after this storm finally passes, we need to recognise and plan for the following things, because these give us hope. There are new ways of working. Teachers have been amazing. And I've asked my teachers, what will you keep and what will you never do again, both from before and from now? We've embraced technology and learned how to really use it to serve us. We need to celebrate reunion and reconnection when we come back together, because that builds our well-being in mind and body and spirit. We need to celebrate the importance of the communities we belong to, both our classrooms, our schools, our families, our suburbs, and our city hopefully coming back alive. And it's our job to help design better families, better schools, better communities, so that hopefully the world will benefit from what we've learned, because we are the educators. So finally, in wrapping up, I believe that it's really special and sacred work that teachers do. And I want to acknowledge what Shireen said earlier, that I believe, along with medical staff, you are the unsung heroes of this time. So stay well, be well, try to do things in your school, even if it's only a small grassroots, something that nurtures people, because then children watch and they learn. So thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much, Sue. That was beautiful. You are the epitome of authentic leadership. And I love your vulnerability. It shows absolute strength and courage. And it was quite endearing and wonderful to hear your journey. And thank you for all your tips. I really loved what you said, that children cannot be what they cannot see. That is just absolutely beautiful. Thank you again for making the time to be here. We are running a little bit behind schedule. I'm going to go straight onto our next speaker, who is Anthony Klarica. And for those that were on our June Zoominar, you would have met Anthony. Anthony was originally a teacher and since then has worked in a wide range of roles with children, adolescents, and teachers as a psychologist for the past 20 years. He has also worked extensively in sports psychology on proactive well-being programs and performance. Anthony is also the founder of the 6-Star Wellbeing Survey that is used by over 20,000 people. So Anthony, thank you again for being here. We love working with you. We will talk a little bit about the 6-Star Wellbeing Survey after your talk, but I'm going to hand over the reins to you, and we look forward to hearing your insights.
Thank you, Shireen. Can you just give me a thumbs up if you can hear me all right? Great. Okay, thanks Shireen. Thanks, Di. Thank you, Sue, and everyone for joining in. It's the end of a day, so I actually thought I'd just start with 5 seconds of rolling our shoulders because everyone's been listening intently. Just shake out your hands and roll your shoulders, and that's just an example of managing physical well-being in real small ways throughout your day. So feel free to shake your arms and shoulders through the presentation. I don't mind that at all. I just thought I'd start with a quote that I love. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realise this and you'll find strength. And what that quote really sends a message to me about is that you do have strength from within. And I'd like this talk to be really empowering, and we'll focus on how managing well-being for you is a skill. It's a skill that you learn, you develop, and it's something you keep doing for life. It's not just a skill that you use when we've got challenges, but the proactive and preventative part of looking after your own well-being as a teacher is constantly maintaining it, which Dianne and Sue have referred to. Just quickly, with the number of people that are tuning in, we understand that you or someone you know may well be experiencing a wellbeing challenge. That's a time to be really proactive. Don't get disheartened if you're having a difficult time. It's understandable, but take action, or if you recognise wellbeing challenges in colleagues or others, be proactive with them. Hopefully some of the things we talk about today you'll be able to use with yourself or support colleagues with. We know that 1 in 6 Australian workers experience mental illness. Di's spoken about some data in schools. Over a 12-month period, 20% of the population experience an issue. But the reason I've put this up here is because anxiety is often a precursor to depression and is often more common. So we need to make sure that we're being proactive with dealing with our worries. Don't let a worry sit with you. Answer back. Respond to a worry and start taking control of your well-being. Here's some data which is from the 6-star wellbeing survey that, as Shireen mentioned, I developed. It's now sold by ACR. I thought I'd just put up a snapshot of data from almost 30 schools, over 2,000 teachers in the 6 areas that are used in the survey.
Sorry, Anthony, just to interrupt you, your slides are not changing. They're not changing slides.
Really? Thanks, because they're all changing for me. So thanks for telling me that. Did that change then? No.
You sharing the actual PowerPoint, not the showing slide stuff. So maybe stop sharing and share the other one. You shared the wrong one. Yeah.
Sorry, guys.
Wonderful. Thanks, Anthony.
What did you see, Shireen? Can you give me some feedback, please?
We just had your first slide. We hadn't seen anything beyond your first slide, but all good now.
Oh, you can see them all now?
Now we can see. Now you're back to your first slide.
Okay, so you didn't see that slide?
No, but we did hear that amazing quote. You read it beautifully.
Lovely. I'll just keep moving. That's the slide with the data. I'll just draw one point there. Don't hesitate, and I'll talk about help seeking in a moment. Don't hesitate to seek professional support if you need to. That's either internally within your school, from your GP, with colleagues. It's a really important thing as far as the proactivity goes. Okay, here's the slide with the data from the 6-star wellbeing survey. What I'm really interested in is the low to medium level. If you detect that your own wellbeing is becoming vulnerable due to any circumstance, whether it's teaching or personal, be proactive so that the low to medium people in that category can push up rather than deteriorate. And that means putting your antenna up and paying attention to yourself, not ignoring how you're going with your own well-being. I find a lot of teachers constantly looking after others, being resilient or trying to be resilient, being supportive at home, ignore their own well-being. Put your antenna up to how you're functioning and listen to that and use your own experiences as feedback to take action. Did that slide change then, Shireen? Can you see the student version now?
Yes, it is the student wellbeing survey. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. Okay. The reason, it's about teachers today, but the reason I've put up this slide, it's a summary of over 14,000 students and their wellbeing, is because the better a school or your school invests in the well-being of students, the easier it is for a teacher's job. If students have behavioural, emotional, or other personal challenges that they bring to the classroom, which we've all experienced before, and you and your colleagues and principal have to deal with that, that's a challenge to well-being. So let's be sure that as a collective, we're putting in place proactive programs for students that in turn helps us. Okay, specific teacher challenges, particularly in response to COVID. I've put up a few questions here as a way to frame this. Help seeking and the helping professionals. Di mentioned caring for the carer. Are you comfortable with help seeking? Do you know where to, who to go to, so forth? Can you be a help seeker? In my work in sport, I often find that the highest performing athletes are actually the ones that are getting the most help and support. And that's proactive. It's not because they have an issue or a challenge. It's because they want to grow, improve, and stay on top of things. So help seeking isn't just about looking for support when you've got an issue. It's about maintaining proactivity in that space. And I love the two things on the next line with regards to challenges to your own routine. How is your self-appreciation and your self-compassion? Can you be kind? And let's put it another way. How kind are you being to yourself? If something's taking a bit longer to do because it's online, or a session or lesson is taking longer to prepare, are you able to be hard on yourself? Are you able to be kind to yourself, or are you being hard on yourself? Are you able to be flexible and say, right, at the moment, I'm not that motivated. I'll sit with that and work at another time. Flexibility with the changing demands on teachers at the moment is a really important mindset and a value that you might want to embrace. Teacher connection. How well connected are you? We know that incidental conversations in staff rooms, in the corridor, before or after school are that important. Just check in and ask yourself, how connected are you with colleagues at the moment? And if you need to be proactive, more proactive with it, make a list of 3 or 4 teachers that you haven't spoken to for the last month and send them a message. That's not just going to support them, but it'll support you. And if you need support with anything with regards to the current teaching, get that help. And what's your communication like with leaders? It's that important to feel empowered and have a voice at the moment within your school. I think it's one of the more important things. If you're not being heard, put your thoughts forward and try to be as proactive as possible with that. And the other part of the challenge on the education system, of course, is dealing with your own personal factors away from school, with homeschooling, dealing with siblings and your own partners. Consider how that is impacting school and vice versa, so we can be proactive. From a whole school perspective, are your staff embracing and engaging in whole school or whole staff wellbeing training, even if it's one topic? And if you haven't experienced that, which some schools are, which is fantastic, put in a request with some colleagues to your school leaders and ask for something. Potentially get some data, using the 6-star wellbeing survey as an example. Ask your leaders if they've had any training in wellbeing and managing the wellbeing and mental health of their staff. Is there a whole help-seeking culture within your school? And do leaders and do you embrace and put wellbeing of staff at the forefront of your culture? We all contribute to that. And I often like to use the term, don't just be a recipient in your school environment, be a participant. And by being proactive and building autonomy, that helps the self-efficacy that Di was talking about, our growth and building a better environment. Okay. From a personal wellbeing perspective, I love people to break this into 2 areas just to keep it simple. Of course, it's a lot more complex than this, and we all know that. But just for today, with the brief time we've got, if you're looking at managing your wellbeing, treat it as a skill. Be proactive with it and break it into just 2 areas, thinking and doing. Wellbeing's not just a thinking thing. We experience wellbeing from a physical perspective as well. We know that when we don't sleep at night and we toss and turn and have to get up and teach and perform and bring energy that Sue spoke about on 2 hours sleep. So there is a physical component. But from a thinking perspective, focus on your strengths. Make a list. Do you really readily know what you're good at? Remember your impact on students, even if it's one, but that's unlikely because your impact is often not recognised or noticed, and we don't get immediate feedback on impact. Wouldn't it be great at the end of a class if all the students come up and said, "Thank you, miss, thank you, sir, that was fantastic, I love that lesson." You'd be glowing. Don't underestimate your impact. We've spoken about self-appreciation, compassion and kindness, which can't be underestimated. I spoke earlier about responding to worries. Worries are understandable and natural, but don't let a worry lead to anxiety. Catch that worry early and deal with it. And use positive self-talk. And as far as COVID goes, think medium or long term. We understand the challenges of the present, but as some really good people and some successful athletes have taught me with regards to resilience, they say just look a little bit longer and you'll see some hope and you'll set some goals for further down the track. With regards to doing, I think we understand these, but a point on walking or moving, don't underestimate the power of 5 minutes. We're often tired or fatigued, but build in something for 5 or 10 minutes where you can just walk, where you can experience some nature, plan and do enjoyable things. Do you know what relaxes you? Do you breathe and build in some breathing exercises to start the day or end the day or during the day? Who are you connecting with on a personal front to counterbalance your professional relationships? And what projects or hobbies are you engaging with? There's just a very short list of things to be proactive with. And one of the images on the slide is just a collection of apps that I've got on my phone that I often share with people. And if you're more oriented towards being guided in some mindfulness, don't underestimate the power of a 5-minute app. So in summary, treat your own well-being and mental health management as a skill that you get and develop and use, not only for when you've got challenges, but as something to use lifelong as a performer in teaching. Thanks, Shireen.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Anthony. We've been working quite closely with you during the year, and we really respect your input into what you are contributing to well-being into schools for both students and staff. And I love how you're really kind of emphasizing, you know, for well-being to be part of the policies and culture of schools. And we really appreciate that. And, you know, we will be talking a bit more in the next few weeks and into term 4 about how we are going to be working with the 6-star well-being survey in our program. I loved how you broke up that thinking and doing, Anthony. That was really really simple and easy to understand, and gave us some really practical tools. I know we've run a little bit over time. I'm just going to get into the Q&A, and I've just got a few that were sent to Dianne. And then Jody, if you want to just bring yourself off mute after, and if you can just tell us if there's been any other questions that have come through. But Dianne, there was a question earlier on that more Western countries, this is a significant issue. Do you have the data about Asian countries? I think this issue is not that high like Western countries or similar countries.
I don't have the data on Asian countries and Western countries, so it would be really interesting to see that, but also perhaps interesting to see whether there's much difference during COVID. So that's certainly some of the research that is underway at the moment at different universities. James Cook University is doing some research, so is Monash, particularly around teacher stress, and it's international, so there is international collaboration. And similarly, Monash is doing some around student wellbeing and psychology and innovations, and that will be become internationally based. It's moving into Germany and USA first. So Happy to send that through if someone wants to send me an email as that comes to light, because I suspect the differences won't be as great talking to our international colleagues during COVID as perhaps it is pre-COVID. Some of the differences are disappearing.
Fantastic, thank you. Now this was a question from Joshua Burke, and if he's still on the call, Josh, if you can just elaborate, I'll just read out your question. Joshua asked, where do you see the collective efficacy piece sitting within this? The better, the more supportive the work environment, the better the teacher will cope. Josh, if you're still on the call, if you can elaborate, or if Dianne, if you wanted to answer any comment on any of that.
Yeah, I'm happy to comment. I think what's come through from all the different presentations is that there's part of personal resilience and looking after your own well-being and things that we can do, and things like gratitude. So sort of kind of some 3 things we can do around thinking that Anthony mentioned. So thinking about gratitude, thinking about acts of kindness that Sue talked about doing as a principle, and thinking about just tracking positive things in our well-being. But then there are also things that schools can do, so that's that collective care to enable those processes to happen. So that's where schools look at being innovative. Some schools have been doing it and doing it really well for years. Other schools haven't been doing it well for years, and COVID's been a time where they've been forced to recognise their teachers are under stress. But the collective is about providing avenues for teachers to be able to connect, supporting teachers and giving them a role in decision making in terms of our leadership, whether we have a distributed leadership model. That there are, as Anthony said, there are things that we can't control, but then there are ways where we can provide control over the things that we could be able to. So, and that can be that deliberate decision making. So I think it's a bit of both. We've got to actually have both.
Sharine, I might add, thanks, Di, that was awesome. Just to add a little bit of that, I think with regards to efficacy, as teachers, we need to keep investing on our own personal and professional development. Because when you keep investing and doing the things that Di said as well, but when you invest in those 2 things, it becomes a protective factor to well-being. Yeah, and we're teachers are used to investing in others.
Yeah,
and it's difficult to make time to invest in yourself, but break the investment down to personal and professional investment, and over time, you probably surprise yourselves as how much knowledge, information, and experience and expertise you actually develop in, rather than stay stagnant, which gives you a lot of confidence.
Yeah, I think, Anthony, you're right. And just thinking about collective care, that doesn't have to be from the top down in the school. It might mean that the school needs to ensure that there's a culture that allows that collective or encourages that collective care to happen. But it can be about, I've worked in a school where we had a system for students where we had what was called a silent mentor, where we used to check 3 times a year that every single student in the school, that was 660 students, had a teacher that knew them really well. And I mean, knew what they were doing outside school. We could also do that within schools, ensure that all teachers had at least one other teacher that they connected in with regularly and that knew them really well. So there are things that we can do that are top down. There are things that we can do to ensure that they're happening across and between staff, and then there are things that you can do for yourself.
Yeah.
And I also agree with Anthony about the investment in self, whether that's, you know, interest-based or fitness-based, or more around the things that you'd like to do in a school that enrich others. We can't draw from an empty well. If we've got nothing inside us, then we've got nothing to bring. When we've all got something inside us to bring, then we collectively fill each other's buckets, including the children. And that's, so yes, it doesn't have to be top down. It can be sideways and bottom up. But it's about checking in too. And everyone needs to feel significant. I think that's the most important bit. And when people feel that they're valued, then they will invest in themselves because they want to show up well.
Yeah.
Well said.
And a lot of people think, Sharine, of the investment, thanks Sue, investment as being formal education, which becomes a barrier because it's difficult to make time and get funding for that. But as Dianne Sue have said, that investment in yourself can come from working with colleagues, collaborative teaching, reading, podcasts, watching things. You know, the 70-20-10 rule about learning, we need to embrace and recognise that a lot of our learning and personal development can occur on the job. And when we embrace that, it can really help us grow and feel better about ourselves and our work.
And I think just one more thing on that. I think sometimes we get so busy and we're constantly pushing what people need to do and have done and how it's got to look like and what sort of planner it's got to be in, etc. But if we could find the time and space to let people share some of their personal passion projects, things that they've learned that they want others to know about, sometimes it's a chance to shine. Not always do people shine in the day-to-day humdrum of professional learning team meetings and staff meetings. But if you bother to check in and you bother to ask and you say what excites you, what lights you up, that's when you get to know people on a different level. And I think that's for children, that's for everyone, that's for the parents even.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Such wise words. Thank you so much to all our speakers for taking the time, and thank you to everyone who made the time to be here for yourselves. I heard a really great term yesterday called radical self-care, and that's definitely a theme that I've heard everyone speak about today, about, you know, like you said, Sue, you can't draw from an empty well, and really investing in yourself. I love that, Anthony, because obviously, you know, we have to be our best self and have that radical self-care, which means we look after ourselves first. Again, not the go-to point for many of us. So I really, really appreciate you guys being here. Such important reminders. Stride has been working closely with Anthony this year to really build in a new wellbeing platform into our program framework. We're calling it our 3D model, and we are taking a tailored approach to well-being, utilizing the 6-star well-being survey. Our 3D model is what we call discover, design, deliver. And the thought pattern behind that is working with schools, utilizing the 6-star well-being survey to get greater depth of data. With students, you can get that individual deep dive into how someone is traveling, which is, you know, what was discussed today, how important it is to do those check-ins and really get a complete kind of overview of how staff are traveling. With that data, we can then work with your school to create data-based interventions and programs relevant and that speak to your data. So designing programs based on the needs that come out of that the survey, and then delivering those programs accordingly, being able to check in the efficacy and relevance and making sure that we are delivering programs that are relevant and important and have impact to your staff and student cohort. So we'll be following that up in the next few weeks on how we're going to roll out that process, and we'd love to meet with you guys and individually and tell you a bit more about that. We've also got some really exciting professional development programs starting in October, and I may just introduce Philip Willan, who is a new member of the team, and Philip has joined Stride and partnered with Stride, comes from 30 years of experience as a principal and educator in all the school sector, independent, government and Catholic. Phil, I'm going to hand over to you. If you can just briefly, I know we're running a little bit late, but if you can just briefly speak about the 2 professional development programs that you'll be running in October, and just briefly how those are going to roll out. We are going to be sending more details out to everybody, but if you can just let us know a little bit about those, that will be wonderful, Phil.
Sure. Thank you, Shireen, and thank you to the presenters today. Did a fabulous job, and I've been doing a lot of research, but I can add to that pile of understanding now by having the privilege of listening. to Sue, Anthony, and Dianne. I'll be presenting on two topics: wellbeing and emerging leadership. The 6 workshops for each are interconnected but can be seen individually. Obviously, those topics have heightened interest, and we can see by the participation rate today that that is still the case and will be ongoing. The workshops will include evidence-based research, content knowledge strategies, activities for you, activity sheets, time for reflection, and some things you can take with you to build and establish a personal wellbeing toolkit. The 6 wellbeing workshops will include wellbeing for now and in the future, understanding personal triggers that you may have, and an appropriate response, because it can be different for different people, obviously. How to develop a personal wellbeing plan. It's important to develop something from a preventative strategy approach rather than just when a problem occurs, but perhaps doing before it becomes a problem. Looking at specific stressors for teachers, how to process and manage them, modelling wellbeing behaviour for the peers, for your colleagues, and also for students, and using an outstanding emotional and social wellbeing tool, the 6-star wellbeing survey, which provides critical data, benchmark data to use for students and also for staff in managing key areas of need relative to social and emotional wellbeing. The Emerging Leaders workshops will look at why lead. There are challenges and enjoyment, and Sue will certainly identify with this. It is a job that takes so much, but it also gives so much. And there seems to be quite a deal of negative press about being a principal at the moment. And that's for good reason in some respects, but there's much to celebrate. And if you can be better prepared, you'll enjoy the job more, obviously. The workshops also include looking at who you are as a leader and maximising your strengths. Topic of professional management. Conflict resolution is one of the key reasons that principals find themselves under a tremendous amount of stress. So it's not if but when, but understanding how to manage conflict situations can help and equip you so much better, certainly from a wellbeing perspective. Understanding how to build and manage and change culture within a school. You are the key driver of the values and behaviours, how leaders can do that, and then selecting and applying for principal roles from both a practical perspective in respect to application, and then also from a practical perspective in respect to being part of an interview, approaching and managing, answering, responding to questions from the panel. So 2 topics: wellbeing, emerging leadership, things that I'm passionate about, and from a personal and practical experience, have a great deal of knowledge and look forward to sharing that and imparting that with those people I have the privilege of presenting to.
Thanks so much, Philip. And we will be sending out some more details and everything on the program. Just lastly, we are also starting something very new for Stride, and that is a parent program that we're actually starting on Thursday evening. We're actually doing week 1 for free. I am going to put the link in the chat box. We do have the facilitator who's created the program and will be delivering. Oslam, if you want to just take yourself off mute, and if you're hopefully still on the call, and if you can just quickly just give us a little bit of some brief details about oh, I've just seen here Oslam had to go. Okay, well, I will put the details on the program in the chat bar. I've just put there the link. It's actually going to be a 6-week program. Like I said, Thursday night will be week 1, and we're offering week 1 for complimentary, so that everybody can test the waters and see how they like the program and if it's relevant to them. It's going to deal on emotional management for parents, communication, and really how to navigate this difficult time. There's more details on the link there. The whole program for 6 weeks is $180, so it's a really small investment and something that you may want to pass on to your parents or utilize yourself. So again, I'm going to thank everybody so much for taking the time to be here today and attending our events. We are going to do one more event in October, another mindfulness event that we had last month. We will be doing that again and running these events regularly next year as well. So we'd love to hear some feedback from you, and we will be sending out the slides and a recording of this presentation later in the week. And we'd also just really value your feedback as well, which we'll include in that email that we send out. So thank you so much again. Thank you for your patience in us testing out the waters with our tech, and for all your feedback and questions, and patience in us running over a little bit. Thank you again to all our speakers, and I'll have to say a wonderful thank you to our team members that I can see in the background that have been helping me facilitate and supporting us during this difficult time. And so we will say good night. Have a great evening. Do something wonderful for yourself, even if it's taking a nice deep breath. And we look forward to seeing you guys again soon. Thank you so much.